are the sponsors.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's been a small woman's purse handed in. So if you've lost a purse, come up and identify yourself and we'll see if it's yours.
Well, Nick Dennis from Australia is out onto the board. George Mudge from England is there. Our New Zealand shearer Brian Thompson is back on the board. So too is Alfred Jackson from Wales. Sawili Hands should be out in just a second. Here comes Peter Artridge. So we're just about ready to go. Our referee is in there, I think, at the moment in stand number 6. Well Blade Shearing semi-final, heat number 2. Almost ready to go. You know what you've got to do. If you come from one of those countries, they really need your support, so it's up to you to make it go. We expect the fireworks to come, if you like, from South Africa and New Zealand. However, some of these other shearers have been making a little mark here. We haven't heard too much about some of them, but they have been making a mark. In other words, they've stepped up to the plate at the World Shearing and Woolhandling Championships here in New Zealand 2012. All right, shearers on the board. It looks like our referee might be happy. All set, Ken? We're all happy, so we're out and ready to go. Heat 2 it is. Timekeepers ready. Judges ready. Competitors, get set, go. Second heat of the World Woolhandling Shearing, Blade Shearing semi-final. 2 Corridales, 3 long wool. And they set out after their task, after their goal, of course, to get into the top 6. Nick Dennis from Australia is there on stand number 1. Peter Artridge from Australia, right behind his mate, and he's on stand number 2. He had a very good second round. George Mudge from England into that first hind leg, and I have to say I think he's improved with every World Championships. I think he's faster now than he ever was. Behind him on stand number 4 is Brian Thompson from New Zealand. A very quick shearer, has done some good tallies. Then we go back to Alfred Jackson from Wales on stand number 5. And on stand number 6, Sawili Hands from South Africa, a former world champion. So it's all on here, George, in this second heat.
Yes, it certainly is. And they know what went on in the first one, so they know what they have to do now. What a line-up here we have. Nick Guinness from Australia on 1, Peter Artridge, Australia on 2, George Mudge, the experienced English shearer, shearing on stand number 3, Brian Thompson, your own Brian Thompson here from the South Island, shearing on stand 4, Alfred Jackson, another Welshman, shearing on stand number 5, and as William Hands, the great South African, the man with the big broad shoulders, shearing down there on stand number 6. This promises to be a real spectacle, but just at the moment, it's already Brian Thompson from New Zealand is just right into it there. He's a little bit ahead at the moment. He wants to get into this big world Golden Shears World Blade Shearing Final. He's shearing there on stand number 4. This is a real spectacle. Very little between any of the competitors yet, but it's still New Zealand on 4, South Africa on 6. Alfred Jackson, the Welshman, he's right there with him as well at the moment. So this promises to be a real spectacle. 2 Corridales and 3 crossbred sheep to shear. Some of these fellas, of course, shear a lot more sheep than others.
Just a call, please. Murray Tomlin, if he's in the stadium. Murray Tomlin, if you're in the stadium, if you could come to the announcer's desk, please.
And it's again the duel between New Zealand and South Africa for who's going to take over the front running. Sawili Hands on stand 6, Brian Thompson on stand 4. As they turn onto the last side, followed by the Welshman Alfred. He's not far behind, George Mudge also. But as I said, the 2 front runners are starting to make their positions felt already as they come down the last side. Sawili Hands onto the last front shoulder. And onto the front shoulder and down under the front shoulder he comes. And if you have a look, you go 1, 2, 3, and that position. Those blows are finished and he starts on the next one as he hands come back 1, 2, 3, forward again 1, 2, 3, and he's keeping those shears as full as possible to cut as much wool as he can, and that's the difference between the professionals and the guys that are not so professional down here on stand numbers 1, 2 and 3. They're snipping the wool off a little bit. They're only using possibly half the shear, and slowly but surely, and into the board he goes for his second corridor to Willie Hands, and it looks as though that was a well-shorn sheep from here, nice and smooth and round, and the judges are keeping their eye on it, so they've got to make sure that this quality is right if they want to qualify for tonight's final and the title of being the world blade shearing champion. Into the pen is Alfred, is he? No, he's not quite. Brian Thompson, well done Brian, another beautiful shorn sheep, and into the pen he goes. George Mudge is not far behind. 1, 2, 3 guys, all in about the same place. That is stands 2, 3 and 5. And down the last side, George Mudge comes, just taking off those, and he's snipping away there very quickly. Obviously he's not using the full blade to keep the job right. He'll be looking for quality of workmanship, and he's making sure that that is right as he finishes off there now, and I think he's going to drop out his first sheep in third place. George Mudge, yes, there he goes, and into the pen for his... Hello, he's not happy. He's putting an edge back on the shears. He's got the oil stone, and in the meantime, Alfred Jackson down there is back out onto the board with his second sheep.
Yes, and now on a way to go there. Out comes George Mudge, so it's definitely true that experience counts. This man has represented his country so many times in both machine shearing and blade shearing, and he's really hooked into it here this afternoon. He will hope to make that Golden Shears World Blade Shearing Final later on this evening. But still, the real contest is on between stands 4 and 6. Brian Thompson, your own man from New Zealand here, the host country, and as Willie Hands, the great South African, shearing down there. Just watch this man there in the long blow. The volume of wool he's taken on, the way he's making the sheep sit very, very small there, and he's taken off of a massive amount of wool there in a very, very quick time. That's his Willie Hands down there, shearing on stand number 6. The control, just look at the amount of wool he's taken off there now. Very, very fast indeed. Brian Thompson with a big, big sheep there this time, the New Zealander. He's shearing on stand number 4. But don't roll out the 2 Australians here on stands 1 and 2. Nick Dennis here on 1. Peter Artridge, he's shearing on stand 2. Takes off the top knot there now. But again, it's already on stand number 3. George Mudge, he's up the neck there. But I'm sure there's a few Welsh people here in the audience because Alfred Jackson is shearing down there on stand number 5. And he's already up and around the back of the head there as well. But it's now practically together they are. Brian Thompson from New Zealand and as Willie Hands from South Africa as the turn for home. Down the money side of the sheep to come, down to the shoulder. And now it might be the time for you New Zealanders to get behind your countryman there and give him a bit of support. He'll come all the faster down that last side. Who's going to get the drop first and in for the full wool crossbred? It's very little between them at the moment as the step back go over. Who's going to step back? It's the New Zealander steps back first there. Brian Thompson as Willie Hands there drops up the head now. Down to the flank to go. Down the last side. This is the last of our Corridales. Out the back leg to go. Still they're locked together there. And I think the New Zealander Brian Thompson might have pulled a couple of seconds back here. Come on, get behind him and cheer him on. It looks like Brian Thompson to me at this stage. Yes, come on, put your hands together for him. Cheer him on. Give him a bit of support there. Who's going to drop first and in for sheep number 3? New Zealand or South Africa? Very little in it. It's South Africa just by a whisker there. Down the porthole she goes. But Brian Thompson here now. And Brian Thompson is right there as well. And he comes out the same now. He's right back with him there. What a semi-final.
He brings the first of the strong wools out, and here comes the crossbreeds rather, and it's really Hands as well. A little bit of a shuffle around with his blades there on stand number 6. Maybe he's not quite happy with them. Thompson, full of determination. The look on his face tells it all. We look along the board now, and Alfred Jackson from Wales at the moment will be next to go in for those crossbreds, the long wool crossbreds. Here on stand number 5, Shearing for Wales. Then we look at George Mudd on stand 3 for England. Around the long blow he comes, and Peter Artridge has turned onto the last side for Australia. He's down over that last front shoulder. Not an experienced man this, but he's put in a fair bit of practice and learned a lot. A very good machine shearer, and now he's turned his hand to blades and represents Australia along with Nick Dennis on stand number 1, also from Australia. He's just into that first front shoulder of his second Corridale. It's still the pace down here on stands. Let me see, 4 and 6. And again, Brian Thompson looks as though he might have just jumped into the lead. But Swirly Hands, he comes back at him when he comes down that last side. George Mudge from England working away with the left hand now as he comes backwards onto the shoulder. Then he's always done this little trick. Right out onto the back hock we go with the Peter Artridge from Australia. Alfred Jackson from Wales takes the last back sock off. Gets ready to flip this one down the port. Ollie's in good position. Into the long blows. Brian Thompson starting to drop that sheep down. Swirly Hands from South Africa just a few blows behind him at the moment. George Mudge from England. Been with the World Shearing Championship circuit since 1980, and the New Zealander now in front a little bit, so come on, keep him going. Just 2 sheep left in the pen. He needs a bit of support, and he's really making those blades push through the wool. Out goes Peter Artridge from Australia. In goes Alfred Jackson from Wales. Wairarapa Moana, they are the sponsors. This is their semi-final heat 2 for 2012 here at the World Shearing Championships. Oh, and Brian Thompson has got a good lead, but here comes the Wheelie Hands on stand number 6 again. He's not going to let Thompson away with it. Down over the last front shoulder comes Thompson, and Hands is there with him as well. My goodness, what a battle. 2 of these crossbreds to go yet. Full wool, 12-month sheep, call them what you like. They're just sheep with lots and lots of wool on them. That's the best way to explain to me, and I think. That's what long wool really is, isn't it? Down underneath the last front leg goes Thompson, and here comes the Wheelie Hands challenging him all the way. They bring the head out together, so there's nothing much between them. Who's going to have the fastest finish? Look at the flags in the corner of those screens. That'll tell you who they are and what it means to them as their little charts pump away with pride for their countries. A little bit of a struggle there for that one on stand number 6 for Swirly Hands. George Mudge brings another one out on stand number 3 for England. Now it looks like Brian Thompson, or is it Swirly Hands? So quick, come on, cheer them on. Oh, and it's South Africa again. He's got trouble putting it out the porthole, and the Kiwi might go in first this time. He changes a set of blades, Ian. That's what it cost him to be first.
Yes, now and away to go. It still stands 4 and 6 there in New Zealand. And South Africa, Brian Thompson and his Willie Hands there for South Africa on stand number 6. But George Mudge, the experienced George Mudge there on 3. Up and he takes the top knot off, steps through up the neck and away he goes. On stand number 1, we've Nick Dennis from Australia. He's down, out into the flank he goes and out that back leg. Peter Artridge, he's right there as well. George Mudge there goes up that neck. Quite a difficult neck there this time, but up the neck he goes. But it's all, and Alfred Jackson, the Welshman, down there on 5. He's right down into the long blows of his third sheep. He's that bit ahead of the rest of them at the moment. For Australia here, it's Nick Dennis. He comes out now with sheep number 3 onto the board. And away he goes. But it's Alfred Jackson. There must be a few Welsh people here supporting your team, man. Yes, there is. Come on, you Welsh people. We often hear you shout before. Let us hear it again for Alfred Jackson there as he turns her home. Down the money side of the sheep he comes. Down the last side. These are slightly different than the Welsh sheep, but Alfred Jackson can shear them. Down to the shoulder he comes. Look at the quality of the job there. Alfred Jackson and Peter Artridge here on stand 2. He's right down into the long blow as well. But still the real battle is on. They're still locked together. Stands 4 and 6. New Zealand and South Africa. They're still together as they drop down to that first shoulder of their 4th sheep with one more left in the pen. Shearing for the place in the Golden Shears World Blade Shearing Final. What a spectacle this is. The semi-final here. The top 6 will go through to the World Blade Shearing Final later on this evening. And it's still New Zealand and South Africa down into that long blow they are. Who is it going to be? Who's going to get in for that 5th and final sheep first? And George Mudge coming back at him now all the time as well there. The Englishman shearing on stand number 3. Peter Artridge from Australia on 2, and Nick Dennis from Australia shearing on stand number 1. It's Brian Thompson there now on stand number 4, and his Willie Hands down there on stand number 6 as they come down. But his Willie Hands has pulled a little bit back, and I think it's time you New Zealanders got behind your team man there, Brian Thompson. Give him a bit of support, push him on. This is hard work. He wants to get in for that 5th and final sheep quickly and keep the pressure on the South African as Willie Hands shearing down there on stand number 6 as he turns down to the shoulder he comes and down the last side.
And down the portholes, Alfred Jackson, and by gee, he's done remarkably well, this young Welshman. He really has shown beautifully this afternoon. and he would be a very strong candidate to go through for tonight's final. As we look at Brian Thompson just coming onto the front shoulder, and it looks like Swilly Hans is actually taken over the lead again with one sheep left in the pen. The fourth one almost completed as he's finishing over that hind leg. He's changed his shears about 2 sheep ago, and I suspect that he actually gapped them. He must have hit a bit of grit or something, and he swapped his shears very quickly, and these ones are his second string, but obviously very, very good, well prepared, and he's got his act back together again, and away he's going, and he's taken over quite a bit of the lead from Brian Thompson in this last sheep. Peter Aldridge coming out with his fourth, and there was a bit of a duel going between him and Alfred Jackson, but Alfred has got the jump on him, and he's almost half a sheep in front at this point in time. And the other two, George Mudge and Nick Dennis, are shearing along at the same 5th and 6th place on the board as far as speed goes at this point in time. Onto the top nut, the South African onto the top knot, takes it away, steps through, up the neck. He's only got just over half the sheep to go, and he'll be finished, and the time will stop. And if we look up on the board, there's 15 minutes have gone by, so it doesn't look as if it's going to be as fast as the first heat. And that will cost these men, all of them, quite dearly, because time points are critical in when you're getting into semi-final phase.
Yes, but it's all on here now, and away to go. It's South Africa and New Zealand on stands 4 and 5 there in the last of the Golden Shears open blade shearing semi-finals. But it's the South African there as Willie Hands it is down on stand number 6. He's pulled up that little bit of a lead at the moment. But Brian Thompson, the New Zealander, is coming back at him now as well every time he closes those blades. But he has a big woolly sheep here this time. Down into that shoulder he goes. There's still not an awful lot between him. And if the New Zealanders here got behind that man and gave him a bit of support, you wouldn't know what could happen yet. Come on, cheer him on and give him a bit of support here. It's a world semi-final. It's the Olympics of sheep shearing or blade shearing here you're watching. As Willie Hands down there now, he gets the turn for home, cleans off that cheek. Down to the shoulder he comes, and down the last side of his 5th and final sheep. Brian Thompson with a little bit of a wriggler there this time. He settles her down and away he goes again. But another man is going really well there. He's stand number 5. Wales' Alfred Jackson there. The man all the way from Wales. Come on, you Welsh people, get behind him. Give him a bit of a cheer on there. Out the back leg he goes now with one more left in the pen. And don't forget Nick Dennis from Australia here on 1. Peter Artridge on 2. And George Mudge from England. He's right there as well. He drops down into the first shoulder. But it looks like it's going to be his Willie Hands there from South Africa. Down the last side he comes, down to the shoulder. On stand number 6, but Brian Thompson is staying there as well. And Alfred Jackson, the Welshman now, he comes out with his 5th and final sheep on the board there. Come on, you Welsh people, get behind him and give him a bit of support. But look at the South African go there as Willie Hands on stand number 6. Out the back leg he goes. Come on, you South African people. Get behind it for your own as Willie and Hands. There he goes. Put your hands
Give
together.
him a hand, ladies and gentlemen. Wonderful shearing by this great shearer from South Africa.
Well, we look now down the board again, and it's Brian Thompson, New Zealander. I know he was up there with a pace for a start, and of course, as Ian said, there must have been a bit of a gap in the blades, a little bit of sand or something, but by Jove, he certainly came right again when he changed back to that other pair of blades. Now Brian Thompson from New Zealand, just away down the last side, right out onto the back hock. Meantime, Alfred Jackson from Wales, he's getting ready to break the neck open on his 5th sheep, I think it is. Yes, indeed. George Mudge from England round that front shoulder again, the last front shoulder.
And we look at George there, Phil. He's shearing with his left hand now. His right hand is obviously causing him a bit of stress. And over in the UK, when they clipped the sheep, they called it clipping. They swapped the shears from the left to the right hand as they went around the animal, basically clipping the first half with the right hand and the second half with the left.
Brian
and George
Thompson
has been able to do that.
finishes off for New Zealand there on stand at number 4. Yeah, you did right, Ian. They have many different styles when you get over into those United Kingdom area. Some of them starting in the middle of the back even. It's rather strange, but...
And there's no restriction on where you are or what you do. You can be anywhere and shear it anyway, standing up or sitting down.
Exactly. Which is maybe an advantage, who knows. Now, Alfred Jackson from Wales on stand number 5. Gets a little bit of a struggler there, just regains a bit of confidence, hanging on to it, settling it down, making it comfortable. Stands 1, 2 and 3, looking for their 5th and final sheep. This George Mudge from England goes right out, punches the wall, right out onto that back hock, and now he'll finish off over the rump. Peter Artridge is not far away from George Mudge, and down over the last front shoulder comes Nick Dennis from Australia on stand number 1. A little bit of a sweat and very lot of concentration there going on stand number 2 with Peter Artridge. George Mudge from England down the porthole. Give him a cheer as he goes in. Come on, give him a bit of confidence as he comes back on, and let him know that you're still out here watching these fields with this skill, this craft. As Peter Artridge comes back onto the board with his 5th and final sheep in this Blades semi-final. Wairarapa Moana, they are the sponsors. And as I said earlier, I certainly hope there is a representative here to watch this semi-final. I'm sure there'll be one there tonight to watch the final, but as you go through the heats and the finals of everything, in round 1 and 2, in this case for the world champs, the competitors have to go through an awful lot. Nick Dennis from Australia, getting ready to finish off his 4th sheep. 1 sheep left in the pen for him as well. Down the other end, Ian, we have Alfred Jackson from Wales, and like you said, shearing quite nicely, actually making a good job, and the quality appears to be good, just a little bit lacking in time.
Yes, that's Alfred Jackson there, the Welshman, shearing on stand number 5 now. He's 5th and final sheep on the board as he heads down that money side. Down to the flank he goes. He's stuck to the task well, but I don't hear a lot of support from the Welsh supporters here. I think it's time you put me. That's a bit more like it. Yes, it's Alfred Jackson. It is the Welsh blade shearer, the experienced man there, looking to shearing for a place in the Golden Shears World Blade Shearing Final. Down to the flank he goes. George Mudge, the Englishman, shearing on stand number 3. Peter Artridge, the Australian, on 2. And Nick Dennis, the Australian, here on stand number 1. But it's Alfred Jackson, the Welshman it is. You Welsh people, if you cheered harder, he'd go all the harder. Come on, get behind him and cheer him on. It's Alfred Jackson is going to be next to finish. His 5th and final sheep down there. And he pushes the button. Put your hands together there. Well done. Now we've George Mudge from England there. He's really opened up those shoulders there, and away he goes on stand number 3. The experienced George Mudge. And he's really using his experience here. And when you watch him here, when he turns to come down the last side, he'll come down to the shoulder, and you'll see him changing those blades to the left hand. He's done a lovely job there on that sheep. Peter Artridge there on 2. He's down just below that shoulder now, and taking off the top knot on stand number 1 is Nick Dennis there. The sponsors will have to be happy with this one. Look at all the sponsors' names around the stadium here. They're all supported here. And of course that Toohey there that we see, I think all these shears will be glad of one of them as soon as they're finished up here. But unfortunately they can't have one because they'll be all hoping to get through to that big final later on this evening. George Mudge turns for home. Down to the shoulder he comes, and down the last side. The experienced George Mudge from England. Down he comes. You could see him changing those blades over. And maybe he's got... Yes, he's not going to change this time, I think, or is he? We'll just wait and watch. You're not quite sure what this man is going to do. No, he's really motoring. He's found the top gear now as George Mudge comes down the last side. His 5th and final sheep on the board. And a little bit of a wriggler she is. He just says, honey, sit down for a second. Give me a chance to finish. Down he goes, down to the flank. George Mudge and Peter Artridge, the Australian. He's pushing them all the way now as well. There must be a few Australians here in the audience. Anybody here from Australia?
George Mudge is looking to shear in the final tonight. He wants to be there. He's been in 7 World Championships, shearing in the hand section, and he'd dearly love to get into a final. And that's what George is going for. He really has decided to open up and give it his all for this last sheep. It was a good sheep, much better than the one previous one, and he certainly made good time in coming down this last side as he's just about finished, and so too is Peter Ardrich. Remember, they went in together. Peter is just a little bit behind him now, but George Mudge from England, one blow, there it goes. Well done, George. Nick Dennis coming around the first side, holding the sheep down. That left hand is stretching the skin, trying to keep it so to minimise any skin cuts. These razor sharp shears in the hands of people who are inexperienced can certainly be quite fatal. So you've got to know what you're doing. They're honed to perfection, razor sharp. And Peter Aldridge finishing off there now. I bet he's be pleased to see this one go down the porthole.
Yeah, just a
Come
few
on,
more blows
Australia.
there.
I hear it all behind me. Come on, Australia. Come on, Peter. There you go. The button's in. That's it.
Big hand for Peter Artridge from Australia, ladies and gentlemen, as he stands up, shakes hands with his English neighbour, just as his teammate Nick Dennis from Australia on stand number 1 turns for the last side. Heat 2 for the second semi-final here in the World Blade Shearing Championships. Just the last side to go for one shearer, Nick Dennis from Australia. And then we'll find out who the top 6 are that will shear in that Open Blade final tonight. Coming up after this, ladies and gentlemen, we have just 3 more events to round off the afternoon. We have the PGG Wrightson's National Circuit Final. And this is a huge final here in New Zealand, considered one of the biggest titles they go after, where they have to shear 5 different types of sheep, starting in Alexandra up to Christchurch, then on to Waimate, right up to Raglan, and then back down to Pahiatua, and finally here yesterday with the semi-finals, and this afternoon the final. And of course there's a tremendous prize in that, some $1,800, and of course the winner gets 12 months free lease of the Hyundai Santa Fe, which you see sitting outside the stadium. But right now we're concentrating on Nick Dennis as he puts the finishing touches in of the second semi-final here in the World Blade Shearing Championships. He
Give
races
him
the
a
button.
hand, ladies and gentlemen. Nick Dennis from Australia.
Well, that completes our semi-finals for the World Blades. And as we said, we're going on with the next event, the PGG Wrightson's National Circuit Final. And I'm sure you're all going to enjoy this. So we just have a few seconds now while our Lister man, our Acto Agriculture man and his team again, Kelvin and Richard, are up there putting the down tubes back on. And what a marvellous job they have done. Wairarapa and Moana have been the sponsors for this, the World Blade Shearing semi-finals. And again, I'm sure we'll see their representatives tonight. We certainly hope if they're in the audience, they've enjoyed it so far. I know there are Wrightson representatives here this afternoon in the audience, and we certainly do welcome them and hope they enjoy this final coming up now. This is their end to the season here at Shearing, as far as this circuit is concerned. And as